This officially comes out, like, how many times am I going to do this? He has been to so many Taylor Swift concerts, could not be more jealous. Terrible job explaining this. We do love a suspicious drowning at Chapter and Converse. Likely, allegedly, maybe, guessing, Investigator. What was that? And I'm going to talk about some books that I've read in the this is bookish. Hi everybody, it's Audrey and welcome back to Chapter and Converse. Welcome to another round of books I have read recently. This is, I think, some late November into December books. I am currently reading 3 books. I put pause on one because my brain can only handle so much at the same time. But I'm going to tell you what I read. I'm going to give you a sneak peek of what I am currently reading, and let's just dive right into it. So, first book is Heartbreak is the National Anthem, How Taylor Swift Reinvented Pop Music by Rob Sheffield. I had the audio arc of this through Libro FM, which I listened to, which Rob Sheffield narrated. I was low-key obsessed, so then I wound up purchasing it while I was listening to it, which is going to happen again in this pile. There's another book where I did that exact same thing. So you guys know I definitely am a Taylor Swift fan. I had a great time with this. Rob Sheffield has been following her career since the beginning. And this was just such an interesting look at the perspective of her career of someone who has watched her the entire time. He was a writer for Rolling Stone, amongst other things. Let me get his bio correct. Longtime Rolling Stone writer. He's been covering music and pop culture since 1997. He has written Love is a Mixtape, Talking to Girls About Duran Duran, which I need to read, Turn Around Bright Eyes, On Bowie, and Dreaming the Beatles. He is a winner of the 1927, the 2017, what am I even seeing? The 2017 Virgil Thompson Award for Outstanding Music Criticism. You guys will I feel like you know him. You know who Rob Sheffield is. And he has been to so many Taylor Swift concerts, could not be more jealous. But the way he weaves in his experience with her, all of the inspirations into her music. There's a timeline of her entire career at the beginning of this. It is such a love letter to her, but it is not without a little bit of criticism. He doesn't completely go all in that everything she's ever done ever is fantastic. And particularly interesting to me is his critiques on her first songs released off of her albums. And I really enjoyed this. So definitely some insight I didn't have. He weaves in music history in a way that only someone who has such a love and appreciation and knowledge of music could do. But I just loved it. I had such a fun time with this, and I intend to totally read it again, and I'm really excited about it. So I have been on a Taylor Swift kick for many years now, and I'm just enjoying all the content out there. So I think if you are a hardcore fan, if you are a low-key fan, if you're just interested in learning some more about the history of her and her music and her inspirations, can't go wrong. Audiobook is great. Book. Just a nice little snatcher of a book here. I don't even know what that means. Nice little compact book packed with information. Let's go with that. Okay, next up is Devil at the Door by Tessa Wiegert. This is book number 5 in the Shayna Merchant series. I really enjoyed this book. So I have been reading Shayna since the beginning. A Death in the Family, I talk about it all the time. And this follows Detective Inspector Shayna Merchant, who is up in the Thousand Islands, upstate New York. And she was an NYPD detective. She wound up moving up there with her then boyfriend. And now she is an inspector there. And, you know, people get murdered. People disappear. People need to be investigated. And in this book, we have her niece is coming to live with her. So 16-year-old Henrietta used to be happy, but that was before her family hit the national news. So Shayna and her family have some stuff in the past. This is one of those things where you could absolutely read the series from the beginning and get caught up. You could also just jump into this as a standalone because it gives you enough information, but it will spoil things from earlier books. So if you do want to go back to the beginning, you're just going to know some stuff coming in. And I don't know, I feel like you could start here. So this has a little bit of like the teenager getting into trouble angle, which I really enjoyed. So again, Henrietta was living with her parents. She needs a break, so she comes to live with Shayna and her boyfriend in the Thousand Islands. What could possibly go wrong? So it says, Senior Investigator Shayna Merchant, what was that? Senior Investigator Shayna Merchant readily agrees when her brother asks her to help. So when Hen arrives, Shayna's a little bit not so sure. Having a 16-year-old in the house is a bit more challenging than she expected. But no sooner has Hen come, she starts school, she makes some friends. She definitely seems to have a bit of an obsession with like horror movies and some dark things. And then Shayna gets a call to investigate a suspicious drowning of a local teenager, and who is one of the witnesses but her niece. And no sooner does her niece goes from witness to suspect. So Shayna needs to figure out what on earth happened. So I really enjoyed this. I liked the teenage angle of this. We don't get a teenage POV, but like the high school teenage, like new girl in town, instantly embroiled in some scandal, and Shayna's got to kind of balance that line of she's trying to investigate, but it's also her family. So what do you do? I really enjoyed this one. There's definitely some dark, messed up teenager stuff happening here. We do love a suspicious drowning at Chapter and Converse, and we do love police investigation. So you get it all. And I really enjoyed it. So I am holding on to book number 6, which is not the last book in the series, but like the most recent book, which just came out in November, to read that one next. But I really enjoyed this. Cannot recommend the series enough. Can't go wrong. Can't go wrong. Okay. Now we have a book that I have raved about, that I was super excited about, that as soon as I got it, thank you, Book of the Month, Beautiful Ugly by Alice Feeney. I dove right in. The water was fine. I totally enjoyed this book. I'm a huge Alice Feeney fan, and I loved this. Now I also, because spoils, have an audiobook of this from Macmillan. Let me get my audiobook narrator. I wound up doing this and that. So I wound up reading and listening, and I loved the experience of it. Let me get my audiobook narrator right. This was narrated by Richard Armitage and Tuppence Middleton. This audiobook was fantastic. So Richard Armitage, it says, is best known for his role in the Hobbit film trilogy, and Tuppence Middleton is known for her role in Downton Abbey. I have not watched Downton Abbey, but if you guys do, I'm sure you know who she is. So the audiobook was absolutely fantastic. So I probably did like 60% reading, 40% listening, because this was a book that I wanted to be in at all times. And surprisingly, you can't get dressed for work and read a book at the same time, but you can sure as heck listen to it, which is what I did. So this is about a writer named Grady Green. He is having the best worst day of his life. So when the book opens, he is on the phone getting the news that he has just become a New York Times bestseller, which has been his dream. His wife is driving home to celebrate with him. And while he's on the phone with his wife, she's kind of stopped short. She sees something and she's like, I'm going to get out of the car to investigate. He's like, don't do it, don't do it, don't do it. She does. And then he doesn't hear from her. So when Grady goes to look for his wife, Abby, he finds her car like on a cliffside, door is open, phone is inside, purse is inside, all of her stuff is there, but she is nowhere to be found. And then we fast forward a year. He is struggling. He has never gotten an answer to what happened to his wife. She just disappeared basically into thin air. And he can't write. He has lost everything. And his publisher is just like, you need to, is it publisher or agent? I want to say agent. Why am I calling it a publisher? I'm mixing up publisher and agent. Anyway, Kitty is like, you need to get it together. So Abby disappeared outside of London, which is where they lived. And Kitty is like, you need to go to this cabin. It's an island in Scotland. One of my old authors like used to write there. Go there, write your book, get it together. Like, get in touch with me when you finished your book. So he goes to this Scottish island, and no sooner does he get there, and he starts to see Abby. But that doesn't make sense because Abby's gone. So what the heck is going on? So we get to see Grady at this island trying to figure out what's happening. We get multiple POVs. You can see the tags and love Audrey had for this book. I loved it. I love an Alice Feeney book. This was super compulsive. I wanted to be in it at all times. I loved sort of the quirkiness of the island, and I loved him trying to figure out what was going on. I always love a book about an author, and I'm a huge fan. I'm a huge fan of Alice Feeney. I'm a huge fan of this book. I highly recommend it. Audiobook, physical book, you can't go wrong. So thank you, Macmillan. Thank you, Book of the Month. Super happy. Working my way to 0 on Alice Feeney. This was great. Highly recommend it. This officially comes out, like, how many times am I going to do this? This officially comes out in January. If you did not pick it up from Book of the Month, this video will probably be out before this comes out traditionally, but you can pick it up Book of the Month. So there you go with that one. Okay, next up, I have another nonfiction book. So I have mentioned this one before. This is Men Have Called Her Crazy by Anna Marie Tendler. So I started to read this book when it came out, and I wound up pressing pause on it. Like, I wound up putting it down temporarily because I was not in the mood. This is a nonfiction memoir. It is heavy. There are a lot of triggers. It's a lot about mental health. It was not the right book for me at the time, so then I wound up picking it back up. And I actually wound up getting the audiobook of this as well and finished the book. I think I was probably like a quarter of the way into it when I soft DNF'd it. And then I wound up probably listening to the balance of the book, probably listened to 70%, read 30% of it. Anna Marie Tendler reads it, which definitely I feel helped like bring me into the story and bring me into her experience. So I do recommend the audiobook of it. I had seen Hillary Burton Morgan talk about this book on her Instagram, which is why I picked it up. So I would say I have a little bit of a conflict about how I feel about this. Nonfiction memoirs are always really difficult. I did not know, I mean, memoirs are always nonfiction, but you know what I mean. Not a fictionalized memoir. So I didn't know who Anna Marie Tendler was before I read this. I didn't know who she was before I saw Hillary Burton rave about it. But kind of how it was pitched to me is she sort of was recounting her life experience through relationships that she had and how these relationships with these different men shaped her. And went back to high school. I was super curious about it. And what I came to find out, like, as the book came out and I was seeing more about it, she used to be married to the comedian John Mulaney. I don't know anything about anything when it comes to them, when it comes to their relationship. I wound up reading a few more things about it. Did not end well. Definitely some questionable stuff going on there. This has nothing to do with him. What it sounds like is she likely, allegedly, maybe, guessing, signed an NDA and couldn't talk about him because they do get divorced. It obviously has a huge impact on her. She like references she got divorced. I feel like maybe once she says my ex-husband, but they were together for quite a long time. And all of that is missing from this book, which feels like there's things missing from this book. Like some things just don't quite connect or don't quite get explained. So not that I'm here for like the dirt on what happened with them, because again, I don't know anything about anything when it comes to them, but it definitely feels like a core of her story is missing. But then there's the flip side of it where she was defined by him in so many ways because she was like his wife, and I guess he talked about her a lot in his comedy sketches. And this isn't about him, this is about her. So this is her story, but it's also her story through her relationships with men. So I do feel like we're not getting a full picture of things because there's no way that relationship didn't impact her, but it's very much not in the book. So it's like she's in LA or she's doing this, but the context is missing. Whereas with some of her other relationships, we're getting everything. So it does feel like there's something missing here, which again, take with a grain of salt. So the book starts in early 2021. She checked herself into a psychiatric hospital following a year of crippling anxiety, depression, and self-harm. And I believe it was like when I want to say like she found out she was getting divorced like while she was there. I don't know. The whole thing sounds really messed up. So there's a lot about so it sort of goes back and forth between her being in the psychiatric hospital and then flashing back to past relationships. And it's definitely very heavy, obviously, on the mental health piece of it. There's a lot of triggers in this book. If you're interested in it, I would definitely check them out. It's a heavy book. It's interesting. She is not without her struggles. I do wish her the best. There's a lot to unpack in this book, and she definitely made some bad choices with men. I mean, who hasn't? If you haven't, good for you. I mean, I certainly have. But it talks about how these relationships impacted her and really how her life not was controlled necessarily by them, but how these relationships impacted who she was for better or for worse. So definitely an interesting book. Not what I thought it was going to be. And then again, finding out later a lot of the John Mulaney stuff. It really does. When you're reading it, it feels like something's missing. And then I realized, oh, this is what's missing. And it's probably for good reason that she's not writing about him. So there you go. Probably not a helpful one, like review-wise. So if you're interested, give it a go. Just read the triggers and just know if you're looking for salacious gossip, his name isn't even mentioned in this book. So just know that. And then I have 2 more fiction books. So the first one is The Night We Lost Him by Laura Dave. I also had the Libro FM arc of this. Julia Whelan reads it. It's fantastic. Partway through the book, I decided to physically purchase it because I needed to have it. I made myself wait. I made myself wait a little bit because I was like, oh my God, I need to buy this immediately. And I was like, let me just get more into the story. I loved it. This is complicated grief. This is complicated sibling relationships. This is a family, I feel like family drama, contemporary fiction with a mystery. It's not a thriller. I wouldn't even call it thriller light, but it's written in a way that has, I feel like, page-turning thriller writing to it. So Nora and her estranged younger brother Sam wind up working together to figure out what happened to their father. So Nora's father, Liam, both of their fathers, why am I saying it that way? So Liam Noon was their father. Terrible job explaining this. He's been married 3 times. So Nora was from his first marriage, Sam and his twin brother is from his second marriage, and then he has a third marriage in which he had no children, but he has kept like all of his family separate. Nora and Sam didn't really know each other growing up, but their father has recently passed away. He was at his beachside, cliffside home in California. His body was found on the beach, and Sam is convinced that someone was involved in his father's death. He doesn't believe his father just like slipped and fell off the cliff of a home he's owned for like decades. So they wind up working together to figure out what's going on. And they do not have much of a relationship. So seeing them together is fantastic. I loved their dynamic so much. Laura Dave is such a fantastic writer. And I am kicking myself for not reading more of her, because I read her first book, London is the Best City in America, and I loved it. And I never went back and read more of her books until the last thing he told me. And now I'm reading this one. So I want to go back and finish her backlist. But I love her characters. I love her language. I love her storytelling. I love her style. So much raw human emotion, so much relatable human emotion. I don't have a brother, but I feel like she captures this sibling connection. She establishes like that rub between siblings really well, whether it's competition, because we're seeing also Sam's twin brother, Tommy, and the relationship between them, the distance between them and Nora, and the connection that family has. I loved it. We also get it like past timelines through Liam's eyes. So we get to see him and what was going on in his life as Nora and Sam are discovering things about their father's past that they never knew about. I loved it. It was like heartwarming. I cried. I just felt so good afterwards, but there's so much pain to it as you talk about like the complicated grief, losing a parent. And I just thought it was so good. And then their complicated relationships with people in their lives. There's so much. It's not a big book. There's so much expertly packed into this. Like no word is wasted. It's so good. It's so, so good. So I want to say it transcends like 50 years. We're in California. We are in New York. We are in Brooklyn. We are on the Upper East Side. We are in upstate New York. And it's just so fantastic. It's so, so fantastic. I couldn't recommend it enough. I already want to reread it. It's like one of those experiences where as soon as I was done, I was like, yep, I need to go back and read more. So add her to my list of authors I want to read to 0, and we'll see where I get with that one. I just loved it. Couldn't recommend it enough. So physically read it again. Listen to it. Listen to Julia Whelan. Do both things at once. And I don't think you'll be sorry. It's just a really, really fantastic book. And I don't think she's underrated in the sense that Last Thing You Told Me blew her onto the stratosphere. The Apple TV adaptation is fantastic. They're doing a season 2. She's writing a sequel to that book. But I feel like before that book, totally underrated. So much to read there. I think there's 5 books before Last Thing He Told Me. Fact check yourself, Audrey. Yes, 5 books before The Last Thing He Told Me. But she's fantastic. Not to be missed. Loved it. Loved it. Loved it. And then the last book I have that I finished is Society of Lies. This is by Lauren Ling Brown. This came out, I want to say October, Dark Academia. This was one of my most anticipated books of the year. I really loved this book. I will tell you in full disclosure, I am having a hard time reading books that have a dual timeline with a college campus because that is what I'm writing. And I have intentionally both tried to avoid Dark Academia, but I'm so thirsty for it. So I had to pace myself with this book because what I never want to do start to like really self-doubt, imposter syndrome myself as I read a finished product of an absolutely amazing book. And what I also don't want to do is start to read things and be like, ooh, that's a good idea, and unintentionally start to just osmosis other people's books into mine. So I read this very slowly, but not because the book needed to be read slowly, but because I needed to read slowly. So just know that going in, that Audrey had it like writing stuff going on while I was reading this book. But this is absolutely a book that you could binge, and I could see how it's bingeable because I wanted to read it, but I needed to like distance myself from it, but I didn't want to not be reading it. Any of that make any sense to anybody? Okay. So this says, how far would you go to belong? Maya has returned to Princeton for her college reunion. It's been 10 years and they are there. It's like graduation weekend, and her younger sister Naomi is graduating. And when the book opens, we find out that Naomi has been found dead right before graduation. And Maya is really concerned, obviously, what happened to her. But Maya is also concerned that Naomi's death might have something to do with the Sterling Club, which is a little bit of a secret society, social club on campus that Maya also belonged to when she was there. And we get dual timelines of Maya being in college and then current day, like Naomi in college, like leading up to what happened. And then we get Maya in present day. And we have some past mysteries. We have some present mysteries. We have Audrey eating her hair. It is all the things I love in a book: secret society, dual timelines, like multiple POVs, past and present mysteries. So we're trying to investigate and see how everything ties together. I really liked it. I will say it took me a little bit because I was dipping in and out, to get all the characters straight, because we have Naomi and all her friends in the present in the Sterling Club, and then we have Maya and all her friends in the past in the Sterling Club, and we have people in the past timeline with Maya also in Maya's present timeline. So it definitely took me a few back and forth chapters to square who was in which timeline. But once I got it down, I was off to the races. And there's a lot packed into this book. This is like a 350-page book. I don't know why it feels bigger than that. There's a lot packed in here. There's a lot of great mystery. There's a lot about their family, their relationship growing up, the challenges that Maya had because their parents had passed away, trying to take care of Naomi as she was also trying to put herself through school. A lot of different connections here. And I really enjoyed where this story went. And it was one of these books where like questions are asked and answered throughout. So it's not a book where like everything builds to like the last 3 chapters. You are getting reveals and conclusions and solutions along the way, but like new things keep happening along the way, which totally keeps it page turning. So I really enjoyed this one. I thought it was like very atmospheric. I do love the secret society, like I talked about, and the sisterhood connection. We obviously don't get to see them as sisters in the present day because Naomi is dead, but we do get connections from their relationship in past flashbacks. So it definitely has that complicated grief piece to it. It's definitely a little bit gut-wrenching. And watching Maya try to navigate Naomi's death, but also to figure out what happened to her, is just like, when I say there's a lot going on, I don't mean it in a negative way. There's a lot happening, so it felt very realistic in some ways about how somebody would struggle for all of this. Maya's also a mother, so she's trying to take care of her child and trying to navigate her relationship with her husband. Like, there's a lot for people to be going on in this book, and I just highly recommend it. I think it was fantastic. And who doesn't love, you know, the dark academia, secret society murder books? Love. Love, 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 love. So happy I finally read it. I meant to read it sooner in the year, and I mean, it came out in October, so like, meant to read it like in October. But anyway, read it, loved it, highly recommend it. And then a sneak peek about what I'm reading now, so you'll know some of what's coming up in the next wrap-up video. The first one, it's just the cover. This is Everyone on This Train is a Suspect by Benjamin Stevenson. He wrote Everyone in My Family Has Killed Someone, so this is the second book in that series with Ernie Cunningham. And honestly, you could read this as a standalone. You don't have to read book one. I thoroughly enjoyed book one. I probably have 50 pages left in this book, and I'm gonna make like a little bit of a statement in that I might like this one better than the first book, and I loved the first book. This is a group of writers on a train, and somebody gets murdered, and it's one of these things where you have a bunch of crime writers. So like, who better to solve the murder, but also who better to plot the murder than a bunch of crime writers? So set in Australia, fourth wall breaking, wickedly funny, absolutely enjoying the heck out of this one. And I am excited to see the whodunit of that one, but highly recommend it. And then I am about halfway through A Game of Lies by Claire McIntosh. So this is the second book in the D.I. Fionn Morgan series. So The Last Party was the first book. I did not plan this because I actually started to read this and put a pin in it because I wanted to read Beautiful Ugly when Alice Feeney came in, and then I started to read other stuff and put this one aside in like the end of November. So I read The Last Party, which is the first book in the series, on New Year's Day 2024. That book is set on New Year's Day. A rich vacationer is found floating in the river, and it's like the lake between, river lake, I think it's a lake, between England and Wales. So they can't quite decide who has jurisdiction over the body because he's kind of floating in the middle. So Fionn is from Wales, and then she has to work with another detective from England to solve the crime. And then I find like, here I am towards the end of 2024, and there's a chance I might end my year on A Game of Lies, which has nothing to do with anything happening in December, but I might bookend 2024 with two Claire McIntosh books from the same series, which was not at all my intention. So this one has a reality game show vibe to it. And it says, they say the camera never lies, but on this show, you can't trust anything you see. Stranded in the Welsh mountains, 7 reality show contestants have no idea what they've signed up for. Each of these strangers has a secret. If another player can guess the truth, they won't just be eliminated, they'll be exposed on live TV. And the stakes are higher than they ever imagined, and they're trapped. So one of the contestants disappears. Fionn gets pulled in to try and figure out what's happening. And, you know, Fionn has to figure out kind of who's doing what, and where's the missing person, and what happened to them, and all that fun stuff. So I would say I'm probably like halfway through this one. I would love to finish it this year, and maybe I will. So stay tuned. I meant to go back to this one, just detoured the way Audrey is apt to do. And then the last book I'm currently reading is You'll Never Believe Me by Carrie Farrell. This is A Life of Lies, Second Tries, and Things I Should Only Tell My Therapist. This was sent to me by St. Martin's. This is one of my most anticipated books of January. I talked about it in my January most anticipated video, hence it's one of my most anticipated. So I'm probably like 60% of the way through this right now. So stay tuned for more on this. I'm thoroughly enjoying it. It's wickedly funny. She was the hipster grifter. I've reached the point where she was like, I am stuck with this moniker. Like, this is what they started to call me. She did some pretty shady things in her day. She was on the Utah Most Wanted list for passing bad checks. And she definitely used some people and lied about a whole bunch of stuff. and got herself into a whole heck of a lot of trouble. And now she is kind of dealing with the consequences of it. And we'll see how this ends. We'll see what her redemption story is like, but thoroughly enjoying this one as well. So next wrap up is going to feature some of these books, and I'm not sure what else because I'm not sure what else I'm going to read. But until then, let me know what you guys are reading. What are you ending your year with? There's a really good chance this is going to go up at the beginning of January. So what did you end your year with? Let's do that instead. What's the last book you read in 2024? And yeah, so more videos to come. I will see you guys in those videos. Thank you so much for watching today. And until next time, as always, take care, everybody, and I will see you then. Bye.